Hi there. My name is Coralie de Lima Smith, and I'm a senior fisheries scientist at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And today I will be presenting the Seafood Watch Lake Superior Fisheries Sustainability Report. I will mention that this is a draft report at this point, so things might change. Before I start, I'd like to thank the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission, the committee members, because I've interacted with a lot of them and they've been extremely helpful. All the biologists, managers and reviewers who have reviewed this work. It was really, awesome to communicate with everyone. Am I changing the slides? Oops. So for those of you who may not be familiar with our work, the mission of the Monterey Bay Aquarium is to inspire conservation of the oceans. Given our impact, the impact of our purchasing power on communities and environments across the globe, we launched the Seafood Watch program in 1999. So our work follows a basic theory of change. Seafood Watch ratings provide consumers and businesses with the information they need to make sustainable seafood choices. Market demand for sustainable seafood products leads to engagement with producers that are seeking to improve the sustainability of their production practices. We also work with governments globally to ensure that there is support for sustainability improvements. Now, Seafood Watch ratings are created using a set of standards developed for the production method under consideration. So we have like a wild captured fisheries standard or an aquaculture production standard. And our focus today will be on the Seafood Watch fisheries assessment. So I'll just take a moment to explain our core themes. The standard consists of 4 criteria, each assessing a specific element of sustainable fisheries. The first criterion consists of the impact on the stock or the species, that's abundance and fishing mortality. The second criterion consists of impacts on other species. The third one is management effectiveness, and the fourth is impacts on habitat and ecosystems. So I will be talking about C1, C2 and C3 today, and I'll mention 3.1. I won't talk about C4 because everyone's done pretty much really well on that one. So each criterion includes several factors which are assessed using the best available scientific analysis that results in a numerical score and an associated color, that is green, yellow or red. The criteria scores are combined to provide an overall numerical score for the species being assessed, along with an associated color rating, that is green, yellow or red. So I'll just present the overall table first, and then I'll dive a little deeper, depending on how much time we have, into why I've scored specific things the way I have. If we don't have time, of course, I can stop. So this is the lake herring table. I'm sorry for those of you who are unfamiliar with our standard, but there, just look at the last column. So for lake herring, we've rated it as a best choice for all the regions in Lake Superior, and there was no previous rating for lake herring. That's Cisco. So for lake trout, most of the fisheries get best choice except for Ontario, I believe. Apologies to the Ontario folks. Also, I just want to mention that a yellow rating is certainly not a bad one. Green is, of course, excellent, but yellow just means that there's room for improvement and you still get market access. I mean, you get market access anyway, but you still get Seafood Watch endorsement. For lake, this is still lake trout. You can also see that there's been quite a bit of improvement, particularly in Wisconsin, for lake trout. And with regards to Lake Whitefish, also we have a couple of yellow ratings there. We have the Ontario one that's yellow, and I believe the tribal fishery in 1836 waters of Michigan. And again, here we have an improvement from the last assessment with Wisconsin. Finally, the walleye set gillnet fishery in Ontario also received a yellow rating, but the score has improved since the last assessment. Apologies for the text in this slide. So this report includes recommendations for lake herring or cisco caught with suspended gill nets, lake trout and lake whitefish caught using gill nets and traps, and walleye caught using set gill nets. The Lake Superior Seafood Watch Assessment includes 26 fisheries in Lake Superior, hence I need my notes to read from them. These include state and tribal set gillnet and suspended gillnet fisheries in Minnesota, set gillnet and trap net fisheries and suspended gillnet fisheries in Wisconsin, set gillnet and trap fisheries in tribal and state fisheries in 1836 and 1842 waters of Michigan, and set gillnet and suspended gillnet fisheries in Ontario. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because I guess you guys are experts on this and I'm not. But I can just say that, it's clear that lake trout has been rehabilitated in Lake Superior. Recruitment of lake whitefish and cisco has been pretty successful. And with regards to walleye, rehabilitation is still progressing. And we know that the species evaluated are more important regionally than globally. So across Lake Superior, the stock status of lake herring or cisco has improved, as I mentioned earlier. Now this is largely because in 2023, the Age 1 abundance estimates for lake herring in USGS bottom trawl surveys was about 1,019 fish per hectare, which were the highest seen since the 1970s. So everybody gets a green rating for that. That's criterion 1. With respect to criterion 2 of cisco, the gear type was highly selective and there were no other species found in the catch, and so it also gets a green rating. And as I mentioned before, I'm just going to talk about 3.1 here because that's actually a driving factor. We know that there are hydroacoustic surveys and the exploitation rate is set between 10 to 15% depending on different regions in Lake Superior. We know that in Ontario, harvests are quite low, actually almost below 10%. Ontario and Minnesota have a management strategy evaluation in place, and hence 3.1 was scored as highly effective. I believe Wisconsin doesn't have a management strategy in place, so because cisco is a forage species, 3.1 was scored as moderately effective. And with regards to the Grand Portage area, just because sometimes the TAC is met and sometimes it is not, we scored 3.1 moderately effective. And of course, just to reiterate, that still makes the overall score of green even if 3.1 is yellow. So moving on to criterion 1 of lake trout, abundance and fishing mortality. I won't talk too much about this. Here you can see that lake trout is doing pretty well in terms of abundance and fishing mortality throughout Lake Superior. With regards to lake whitefish, in 1836 Michigan waters in the tribal licensed fishery, For both gill nets and trap nets, abundance in some management units is above the target reference point. In WFS 8, it is below the target reference point, and it hasn't been assessed in WFS 6, so abundance has been scored as a moderate concern. Fishing mortality for lake whitefish in most management units, or most regions rather, was scored a low concern, and it is within the specified tax or quotas, whatever the case may be. And so total annual mortality was maintained at or below 55%. The exception is, of course, 1836 waters in the tribal licensed fishery, where again fishing mortality in WFS 8 has only recently been below the target reference level, and in WFS 6 there's no stock assessment, and so it got a moderate concern. Criterion 2 of lake trout. So in comparison to the previous assessment, some ratings for criterion 2 have improved, as you can see with the arrows, whereas others have remained the same. In the case of lake whitefish, all the C2 ratings have improved. With regards to the set gillnet fishery in Ontario, Lake Sturgeon limits the C2 score due to its threatened status, and Lake Whitefish limits the C2 score of the tribal gillnet fishery in 1836 Michigan waters due to its moderate concern C2 score. So moving on to criterion 1 of walleye. With regards to walleye, we only assessed walleye in Ontario waters. I do know that there is walleye in other regions of the lake, particularly Wisconsin, but unfortunately I didn't get any information, so we didn't assess those fisheries, and I do know that they are caught in very small volumes everywhere, but with regards to walleye in Ontario waters, there were no biological reference points for abundance. And so we did a productivity sensitivity analysis, and so the score became a moderate concern. And because the ITQ that is set, we didn't know about the appropriateness level of fishing mortality, it was scored a moderate concern as well. So with regards to criterion 2 for walleye, the C2 score of walleye improved from the previous assessment, and again here Lake Sturgeon limits the C2 score due to its threatened status. Now moving on to criterion 3 for trap nets. So the state licensed trap net fishery in 1836 Michigan waters that was previously assessed has improved, and it's actually the only one that gets a green rating for 3.1, or rather highly effective. Management strategy and implementation, that's 3.1 of the tribal fishery in 1836 Michigan waters gets a moderate concern score, again because fishing mortality in some regions was below the reference level. 3.1 in 1842 Michigan waters got a moderate concern as well, because stock data and assessment models are in the process of being updated, and the harvest control rule is informal. Management strategy and implementation in Wisconsin got a moderate concern score because there are no biological reference points for abundance. So with regards to criterion 3 of set gillnets, all of the set gillnet fisheries have received the same score for 3.1, but there was actually no improvement, I think, from the previous assessment. The Canada set gillnet fishery received a moderate score for 3.1 because stock assessments are not conducted. The Wisconsin and Minnesota set gillnet fisheries received a moderate score for 3.1 because There were no biological reference levels set for abundance. The tribal license set gillnet fishery in 1836 waters received a moderately effective score because fishing mortality in WFS 8 has been below the target reference level, and the tribal license set gillnet fishery in 1842 waters received a moderately effective score for 3.1, again because the TAC or the quota in these waters was not based on biological models and the harvest control rules are informal. I think the Wisconsin results are here. Ooh, have I missed something? No, I think I'm done. So to sum things up, I know I kind of painted a little of a bleak picture ending with the 3.1 scores, but actually of the 26 fisheries that we assessed, and when we say 26 fisheries, of course we look at it species wise, which may be different. So although it's caught in the same gear type, the combinations are species, gear type and region. 21 were green in Lake Superior, only 5 are yellow, and yellow is actually quite good. So a lot of certified fisheries actually end up being yellow by Seafood Watch standards, which means that the green fisheries are really excellent. There have been no downgrades at all. In fact, there have been quite a few upgrades. So in Wisconsin, our last assessment for lake trout and lake whitefish for both gill nets and trap nets was a void, and now it's best choice. We almost don't ever see that kind of a comeback, should I say. For lake trout, in 1836 Michigan waters, in the tribal set gillnet and trap fisheries, it's improved from a good alternative to a best choice. And the state licensed trap net fishery in 1836 Michigan waters has also improved from a good alternative to a best choice. And that's the end.